Okay. Well, MicroStrategy did their announcement yesterday, their quarterly results. Very interesting. I watched most of it. I'm going to rewatch it again today. Saylor spoke for about an hour, and I saw somebody posted something along the lines of, I love how Saylor's turning this quarterly results into a podcast. And that's what it was. He talked for over an hour, I think, through his slides about everything they're doing, everything they're planning, and incredible, truly. $42 billion worth of money going into Bitcoin over these next 3 years. 42 billion with a B flowing into Bitcoin in the next 4 years. And I mean, it sounds like a pretty big number, yes, but when you break it down and think about it, that is $40 million per day for the next 3 years. $40 million per day that they're going to be buying Bitcoin. So the question is, like, what? I know that's obviously going to jam up the price quite a bit, like whenever it happens. Just the fact that how much Bitcoin they're going to get versus how much Bitcoin is available, it's going to absolutely drive the price up through the roof. So what I'm very interested to know is how much Bitcoin that $42 billion is going to end up buying compared to how much they put into it so far. And they've got 250,000 Bitcoin to date. It's going to be very interesting to see how much that $42 billion, $40 million a day, how much Bitcoin that's going to get them. And I think that that's going to be a very good indication of how hard it's going to be for everybody else to get Bitcoin. It's kind of crazy. And the crazy thing for me, and I was talking about this with Bridge last night at supper time. And I had one of those moments, when things just click. It's like a euphoric moment almost. And I was kind of trying to explain it to her because, she's very intelligent, like probably more intelligent than me in a lot of ways, but not financially. Like she didn't go to business school or to accounting school or through any of that, but she still gets it. So I was trying to explain it to her the best way that I could, and she grasped it for the most part. And the more I just had one of those feelings where I couldn't even really contain it, of like, I can't believe this is real. And I was like, it kind of sounds like almost too good to be true. And whenever things are too good to be true, you want to avoid it. But when you understand what's really happening here, because one side, he's basically just exploiting the fiat system. And so what you're doing by betting on MicroStrategy, essentially, in my opinion, is that you're betting on fiat to fail. Because if the only way the MicroStrategy succeeds is if Bitcoin succeeds. So what Saylor's doing is he's basically just exploiting the fiat system and taking all of that capital from the fiat system and putting it into the new system. So really the only way, in my opinion, that MicroStrategy could fail at this is if Bitcoin fails. Or if something happens, something out of our control, like they get hacked, government seizes the Bitcoin, something along those lines. But assuming that everything goes fairly smoothly, it's incredible what he's doing. And he called it himself the world's first Bitcoin treasury company. That's what they're calling MicroStrategy now. The Bitcoin Treasury Company, BTC. So I started thinking about it last night too. And I was like, okay, well, I saw that, the Bitcoin Treasury Company. Just think about that. If you think that Bitcoin, as talked about earlier in the chat, is a commodity, is property, it's very much the same as like a real estate company, like a real estate holding. There's a whole bunch of big companies. All they do is just hold real estate around the world. They got real estate in the US, they got real estate in Mexico, in Dubai. They start a company, they buy up real estate, they rent it out, and they keep buying more. They leverage the assets that they have, take on more debt, buy more real estate, keep renting it out, keep cash coming in. Like there's a ton of companies in the world who do that with real estate already. And basically what Saylor's doing is he's taking that exact same concept, but he's using Bitcoin instead of real estate. And think about how genius that is in terms of like where we're moving to, in terms of the digital economy that we're moving into, that we're kind of already in. And he's not going to rent out the Bitcoin, but he is going to do the same kind of thing without all the headaches. And he talked about the Bitcoin yield there. So instead of renting it out to people and to businesses, he's just basically going to take fiat for very low rates, interest rates, buy more Bitcoin with it and grow that way, instead of having to rent, having to worry about tenants, having to worry about property taxes, having to worry about maintenance, having to worry about the governments in each different geographical location and what their next policies and laws are going to come out and say. So he's basically taken something that has worked very well for so many years in terms of like a real estate holding company, and he's just applying that exact same thing with Bitcoin. It is fucking brilliant. It is brilliant beyond comprehension for a lot of people. And if you think that you missed out on MicroStrategy, I think that very much like Bitcoin, you need to rethink that, because nobody even knows what MicroStrategy is doing. They've went from like 5,000 market cap to 1,000 to 500 to 200. I think they're below 200 now. And the crazy thing and I talked about this last week, but the crazy thing that's going to happen here is that when they get to number one, when MicroStrategy gets to the number one in market cap, they're never going to leave that spot, because nobody's going to be able to ever catch MicroStrategy in terms of their Bitcoin, ever. And that was before they announced that they're going to put 42 billion into Bitcoin in the next 3 years. So they're going to get to number one probably fairly quickly, and then they're just going to stay there forever, or until Bitcoin fails, essentially. Because there's no way, if that's the underlying asset that everything is measured against, Bitcoin, and he's doing it properly and he holds on to that Bitcoin, there's nobody that can ever surpass them at number one spot. That's my opinion on it. Could be wrong, but I don't know. What do we think? What do we think? Jason says, just got confirmation my MicroStrategy order filled this morning. No tricks. No tricks, just treats for Jason today. Bren says, Saylor is so freaking brilliant. The MicroStrategy Bitcoin-backed savings bond, twice the upside of Bitcoin with zero risk. Yes, I agree with you. I wouldn't say there's zero risk though. That's the thing that people have to keep in mind here, because even though it seems, on paper and in reality, it's a really solid strategy that's going to like make people's heads explode when they really find out what's happening. Because keep in mind here, there's a very small fraction of the population who understands Bitcoin. There's even less people who understand what Saylor's doing here. So very early, tremendous upside, but there is still risk involved there. And the risk is that you're trusting somebody else with your capital, right? The beauty of Bitcoin, as Satoshi designed it to be, is that something that's peer-to-peer. You can hold the keys to yourself. You don't need a bank. You can send it peer-to-peer. That's the real beauty of Bitcoin. But it is going to be used for other things too. So that's the benefit of holding Bitcoin over MicroStrategy, that you're not trusting Saylor. You're not trusting the government. You're not trusting anybody. You hold the keys to that Bitcoin, and there's risk of you losing it, but there's no risk of anybody taking it from you. So I agree with you, but you have to keep in mind that there is risk there still.